bit tongue-in-cheek, but Instructables, of course, being the kind of maker site, how to do things, how to make things, and posting what essentially was an activist project on this site that's really kind of apolitical, at least that's how they think of themselves, caused quite a reaction, many thousands of views, and the comment section was pretty amazing because it became a full-blown debate about America's drone warfare and the policies therein, which was fantastic and unexpected. And I really like distributing my work into these kind of I don't know, non-art spaces. Bottom there is called Sea Level Rising. The one in the center there is called Hands Up, Don't Shoot. Then in 2015, after the killings in Ferguson of an African American male by the police, which is of course all too familiar. And then the drone stamp, and I package these as a activist drone activist rubber stamp starter kit, and thinking of these as a way for people to kind of a first step towards a kind of transgressive action in terms of stamping upon their cash. And I hadn't really thought of it. I mean, I wasn't really thinking of these very much. And last week, a friend, Tim Guthrie, an artist activist in the States, posted this. And this was after the killing of George Floyd and the resulting protests. And it says, this is the artist if you have access to laser cutter and can help Joseph make more here in the USA. And this is the Hands Up, Shoot. Hands Up, Don't Shoot. Rubber stamp project, and distributed about 1,200 of these in 2015. And kind of this project came back into mind from this post. And I was out on a bike ride, and I had an idea. And this is not a mask. So in the States, wearing a mask has become a huge political issue. If you're a conservative and you think this is all hoax, you think you're weak, and you're showing, it's like there's this battle between the left and right, and you would never think that something was a basic, something as basic as kind of protecting yourself and respecting others on a compassionate level would become a political issue, but it has, just like everything seems to. So the idea was, what about making these masks, making a rubber stamp mask for cash, to put masks on the presidents on American dollars. And of course, Donald Trump has refused to wear a mask and made that very clear, even against the recommendations of his own health professionals. So I had this idea. These are just two visualizations of what this might look like. Problem is, I'm socially isolated. I don't have access to labs. I don't have access to a laser cutter. I had no way to produce these. So I posted this on Facebook, help, my kingdom for a laser cutter, and it got 15 comments, and thankfully I got 2 comments from people who had laser cutters in the States who were willing to help, and there was one that I landed up started to collaborate with. That's this guy, Brent Richardson, and he's actually a maker and a artist who lives in Houston, Texas, and I had actually met him. I had run a conference in real life in Reno, Nevada, where I used to live, and he came as a grad student to this event, and I met him. He's a student of a former student of mine who's now a professor in Oklahoma. And he said, oh, I can make these. I run a fab lab here in Houston. And he's actually involved right now in making masks for low-income and minority communities where he lives. And so he's totally into it. So actually just launched this yesterday. So this is kind of an announcement of sorts. The project is called This Is Not a Mask, and we are producing, we're going to produce as many as people want of these, and essentially hoping that people will buy, will order some of these and then stamp the cash that they might have, and eventually distribute those through spending. And of course, we understand that people are not using cash at the moment. And we have information this on the website. This is the actual front page of the Tumblr site. And there's information on there saying basically, please respect social distancing. Don't spend your cash if it's not safe to do so. But if you're like me, at the start of this crisis, I got 300 pounds out of the bank just to have some cash on hand. I imagine people have cash. Stamp it, send us a photograph, we'll put it onto this website, and in that way it will be circulated visually, and it's about getting the idea out there, and eventually people will be using cash again. And I don't think this issue of wearing masks or the COVID crisis are going away anytime soon. So yeah, so this is the website. This is not a mask.tumblr.com, and if you want to participate, I haven't. Moving towards considering stamping cash here in the UK. It's actually it's illegal here in the UK. It's actually technically legal in the United States, but you know these are meant to be transgressive acts. So you know that's how it goes. I used the others extensively upon moving here to the UK 2 years ago. So, but anyway, that's one of the projects I'm working on right now, and I know I've got a short amount of time to chat about it, but I just wanted to put this forward as a way of, I don't know, using the situation we're in to the best possible means, you know, of actually turning this disconnect and thinking, oh, I can't make these, I don't have access. Okay, well, who does? How can I connect? How can I use the internet to actually connect with people? And as a result, it's become a collaborative project across between two individuals in different countries, and hopefully this will get out there in a way and at least spark some conversations and get people thinking, but also to just, I think one of the things that was really magical about the previous 3 iterations of these rubber stamping projects is it is that kind of first nascent gesture of taking an action, of doing something and saying, this is my cash, and this is my country, and me, and capitalism, all these things are issues. But it's an empowering, it creates a small empowering action that I might lead towards other actions as things go. And also the fact that when these do land up being spent, they will get in circulation and people will come across these. And that will be interesting when that is safe to do. Anyway, that's me. That's my website from Harvard University. Thank you very much, Ildar, for having me here, and glad to take any questions at this point. I suppose I should turn this off and just go to my face, right? Stop share.
Yeah.
Okay. And I do apologize. I think my internet is having problems today as well. Serious problems. So maybe you didn't hear me all the way through.
Thank you, Joseph, for your presentation.
Were you able to hear me?
Yeah, I do.
I can hear you, yes.
Nice. Thanks for your presentation. So
Okay.
from now, I want to apologize for the participants and for the viewers of the conference. We had some technical issues because actually I think I could say that. So just like 40 minutes before the conference, I received a call from my neighbors who said like, hey, there's like smoke going out of your flat where your grandma lives. And I was just like, what? Just took a cab there and found out that my grandma forgot like a soup and she just closed her door very tight and was like not even noticing anything. That was like so crazy. The flat was like full of like smoke. I was like, yeah, I opened all windows, like cleaned it and just went back to my studio. I was like, I was really like sort of, maybe refreshing is not the correct word, but it sort of made me understand like what's the real problems. I was like, it was super scary. So is anyone from our participants willing to ask questions to Joseph? Because I don't feel still really capable of intelligently speaking and asking questions. Maybe Helena, you can join us.
I can't switch on my camera.
Yeah, sure. We will ask Женя to turn your camera on. Включи, пожалуйста, Ленкину камеру. Лена Никоноле.
Hi, I'm Helena. Well, it's not actually a question, but maybe some thought that actually we all are thinking about the same, like about some way to expand the limits of artistic practices. So I really like your project. Of course, I knew your projects before, like your presentation. Well, and I really like how you work in this, like with these interventions in some, not in some like white cube or some museum or gallery, but in some public place, in some digital space, doing some interventions for people, like addressing some political, social issues. So just thank you. And well, I'm also thinking of something like doing projects not in a space related to contemporary art, but more about some activist practices. Well, I'm going to talk about this in my presentation later.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. It's actually, I think it's one of the things that's been quite interesting to me is that, you know, I work with a number of people who have been kind of doing these kind of online engagements and crowdsourcing, and all these things have been going on for several years, for decades. And now everybody's having to do it. You know, it's like there's this strange kind of, these sort of online chats and performances and culture and experiencing art virtually. So yeah, I think it's a fascinating and scary time. But it is, I have to say, as an artist, it's probably one of the points, I would say, besides when Donald Trump got elected, where I have felt most hopeless and kind of helpless as an artist. And but you have to, but you kind of, I guess you sort of have to get past that and realize that there are ways to kind of break through that and to provide opportunities, provide experiences that can perhaps even uplift people momentarily, but give them some sense of agency. And I suspect that's a big part of what you're seeing in the States with these protests, right? Is just people are fed up. I mean, they've been pent up and shut in for 2 months and listening to this idiotic president go on, and now fanning the flames of you know, what was a horrible situation. That it's just systematically, structurally such a corrupt system. I don't know. It gives me hope, and it scares me at the same time. But we just have to keep persevering and keep trying things and see what sticks.
Well, but actually the same happened in Russia. Some innocent person was killed, and well, like a week ago or something like this, maybe some days ago even, and it happened in Yekaterinburg. And well, I think it's so great that people in America are protesting, because it doesn't happen here. When we are still sitting online in Zoom meetings.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, it's a bit similar in the UK as well. Although there have been some protests, there's actually been some supportive protests of what's going on in the States. Yeah, experiencing the COVID situation in the UK, which now has, I think, the worst per capita death rate in Europe, is quite sobering and a bit frightening as well.
Joseph, Helena, so we are like a bit late, 10 minutes after our schedule. Is it fine if we switch to our next participants, Evgeny?
Yeah, sure.
Evgeny, are you ready to join us? Can you turn on?
Absolutely.
Oh, nice.
Absolutely. Hello. Can I just begin?
Yes, please do.
Okay, cool. So first of all, thanks Ildar, thanks Helena for inviting me. Let me share the screen. I hope that will happen successfully. Can you see that?
Yeah, we do.
Perfect, thank you. So yeah, that was the title of the presentation I came up with about a week ago, and now the recent events made me kind of reconsider whether that title is a good idea altogether. The idea was to talk about humor, and about internet as an art medium and how these two things can combine and work out. Well, I think that's a good idea would be to start with a few websites. Here is one. It simply shows what day is it today, nothing else. Indeed, today's Thursday. Here is another website, which is called Don't Touch Your Face. I'm going to play a video because the interactivity is a little more complicated. But basically, what's happening, it learns via an algorithm whether you're touching your face or not, and then each time you're trying to touch your face, it tells you not to. Here is another one. I hope that I will manage to successfully work with it. So it encourages you to clap as often as possible throughout the time span of 30 seconds. Look, each time I'm clapping, there is a thing here. This is, of course, referencing the tradition in Europe to clap your doctors every evening. And here is another one, post-corona, which invites you to self-reflect and promises you to send you a letter once the coronavirus is over. Why am I showing you all of that? Well, I think that these are good examples of projects which use internet as a medium and which are trying to be interactive and amusing in some sort of way. And although they do seem as kind of light entertainment on the surface, they, I think, are trying to connect with something a little deeper. So, for example, what day is it today? Simply acknowledges the fact that when you are stuck home for 2 months, you are losing track of the days of the week, and the week doesn't really make any sense. Or, for example, this video, this project, Do Not Touch Your Face, it's a good way of educating people about the importance of, well, not touching your face during the coronavirus pandemic. And this, if you look at its press coverage, is definitely much more effective than whatever medical advice you will get from your government or from media. So I've been thinking about like the crisis and what the crisis in general, like how the flow of information is structured during the crisis and ultimately what artists can do with that. Yeah, by the way, I have very little slides. I hope you will be able to follow, and also that I'm not speaking too fast. Ildar, Helena, please feel free to interrupt me if this is a little too fast for either the interpreters or other participants. And also, if there are any questions or comments right now as I speak, feel free to just, plug in and interrupt. Maybe a conversation will be slightly more interesting than a flat monologue. So I kind of started thinking about how we get information when a crisis is happening. And there is an interesting twist that you have sort of two realities. One is the one that you observe through your window, and another is the sort of picture of the crisis that you get from the media, which today means online, most likely. And these are two very different realities, because for most of us, or at least for the lucky majority, the crisis does not affect them personally. So instead, you get a picture of the crisis from the media, and the media's view is like special. I would say it's negative, mostly. I would say it's sort of dramatic, mostly. You get a very particular tonality of the stories that you're capturing. And once you are in that sort of flow of information, also it's huge. Like it goes for dozens, maybe every hour. And A, it's hard to follow. B, if you're following it, it's very tiring. Another actor which participates in the sort of building up the picture of the crisis is the government. It's the number one authority which has the instruments necessary to inform people, to push through the noise and provide the necessary information, which potentially can cost someone their life. There is also something very interesting about the way governments communicate, because they are not very good at it. And one particular point of fascination was when I saw a sponsored tweet from French government trying to point to the government website that they set up for informing people about the coronavirus. But note that the government has to pay Twitter money to get to the citizens. I think it's like a good illustration of how polluted the information landscape is. So the question is, what can you as an artist do with in this situation when a crisis is happening? Like, what is your job? What is your point? And I think that it's kind of thinking what is going on, what like all this information is telling you, and come up with alternatives, trying to come up with alternative ways of interpreting the same facts, trying to create tangible entities, let's say projects, which reinterpret what's happening. And the internet is very good medium for that, I would say. And here is a couple of notes why. First of all, it's the fastest way to push things online, obviously. On top of that, it's combining all the existing media, photography, videos, text, and music, audio of any kind. But also, it's the only medium which can build up on them. So, for example, there's an interactivity. You can build simple games. You can build... the viewer can participate now, and they don't even have to go to a museum. They can just open their phone. On top of interactivity, there is the real timeness. So you can gather, let's say, 100 people in one virtual space, and the interactivity also extends from, you know, clicking some simple buttons on the website all the way to getting access to the viewer's microphone and camera and building some truly interesting interactive things. And on top of that, you have endless ways of working with data. Again, from some simple things like determining a person's location and doing something based off that, all the way to, you know, having a neural network synthesize some data for you. Going to show a couple of particularly fascinating projects, not necessarily related to the crisis, which is the general topic here, but still. What happened here is some people took tens of thousands of stock photos. Then they had a bot to run through these stock photos and the captions and put them on iPhones as iPhone cases. And then all of the resulting data set was uploaded to Amazon as real products. You can see some more here. And this creates an interesting illusion of, like, when you're browsing the Amazon product pages, you think that these things are real, although they are absolutely not real. And that's kind of very weird. And I think a good example of how data generation can be used to create something weird. Here is another example. This person doesn't exist. Also, simply portraits of people who don't exist created by a neural network. That's it. I also thought that maybe one can argue that when you're making projects which like have mass appeal, then they are not as deep, not as artistically important, and you can like dismiss them as light entertainment. But I think that's kind of not the case. I think you can have both, and again, the internet is also a good medium for that. So yeah, okay, we already had that one. Here, like, you can have particularly good satire on the internet by, you know, appropriating elements of culture and subverting them in some ways. So, for example, Amazon Dating, a project which satirizes on Amazon and suggests you to order a single to your house with straight delivery. That also got quite a bit of press and got people, let's say, thinking about what kind of corporate dystopia we ended up in. The creators did not receive a legal threat from Amazon, which was surprising, to say the least. And continuing on the topic of, you know, satire and making fun of things on the internet, here is a project that takes a little more time to load. It's an app which you can point on things with your camera and it will tell you whether it's not hot dog or hot dog. I believe the premise for that was taken from the Silicon Valley, the TV show. And it's also a very good satire about startups which are doing absolutely meaningless things in the thousands, and someone gives them money, and there are people who spend their years of their lives doing those things. And finally, This Food Does Not Exist is also like a parody of the previous project of This Person Doesn't Exist, which simply sends you pictures of AI-generated fit for whatever reason. The point I would like to finish with probably is that internet is really an amazing medium, and there is a huge set of technologies which are recently developing and are very, very accessible really compared to, let's say, 10 years ago. That includes voice recognition, voice synthesis. Then there are neural networks and various ways to generate information with rather simple and accessible frameworks and such and such. Then there is AR, which also does not, in some instances, does not require deepest programming knowledge. There are simplified frameworks to do that. And I think more artists should learn these technologies and try to recreate the atmosphere of the internet of the 90s, when it was this sort of experimental free space, when corporations didn't come there yet, and when the internet was fun. Today, it's not really fun. It's mostly, I think, since 2004, when Facebook was founded, it kind of stopped slowly was stopping being fun, and today it's not fun at all. Rather, it's destroying democratic governments. So probably more artists should come to this space, learn these technologies, and do fun, stupid, weird, absurd, empowering probably stuff on the internet. Yeah, I think I will end right here. Thanks again for, yeah?
Thank you, Eugene, for your presentation. And please, if any speakers want to participate in discussion, please do use a raise your hand button, and our operator will plug you into the stream. Helena, do you want to join and talk?
Yes. Yes.
Reached here. Who else is? Only can see Eugene. Hello, Lena. Hi.
Maybe more people could enable their cameras, even if they don't speak currently. That would be nice to see other participants.
Oh, okay.
Okay, our technical limitation for the nice viewing experience is 4 participants with cameras, so there you go. Now.
Got it. Okay, got it. If anyone has any questions, please go ahead. I will be happy to discuss anything internet, humor related, anything.
Well, I wanted to ask about your last project. You didn't talk about that. But I saw it on the internet about it. Tell us about it.
Which one?
About this, news generator.
Oh yeah, I did. I did a Telegram bot where you can send. You can come up with any headline you want in Russian, preferably. You send it to a bot, and bot in a couple of seconds responds with your headline placed on the front page of randomly chosen Russian mainstream media. I believe that some of you would know Medusa, RBK, Kommersant, and some others. Yeah, that's basically the project. You send an imaginary headline and you get a screenshot of your fake news that you came up with immediately. You can send it to a friend, you can prank a friend, you can prank your government, which I would strongly advise against, at least for some governments. Yeah, I hope that sort of gives you the idea of the project. Is there anything in particular you wanted to ask about it, or?
Did you use neural networks for that?
No, not at all. It's purely like the machine does not do anything because you come up with the headline yourself, and it's an actual screenshot when you request, when you submit your request, you get an actual screenshot of the front page at that time. So it's more or less the same thing as though if you would be opening the website on your computer and taking a screenshot and then just photoshopping your headline in there. It's exactly the same thing.
I see also Joseph raising his hand.
But yeah, I really enjoyed your presentation. I had a question, kind of comment. Yeah, I think I agree about, you know, artists using the internet for doing kind of humorous and strange things. I think one of the issues that we're facing at present is like I think of the Yes Men, you know, and what they did, you know, 10, 15 years ago as being really amazing and very powerful. And then you have basically the politicians and the media and the bots all creating fake information that has just exploded across social media, and that and you have people in office, people running countries who are I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up, right? I mean, and I think it creates a very challenging context to kind of do anything that rises above that, you know. And I'm curious what you think about that.
I think that I just recently watched locally the documentary about Yes Men and found out about their stunts. I think they were doing it in sort of unregulated internet, like in sort of pre-corporate internet, where you could fool people, where you could set up a website pretending to be a national commission of something, and a BBC journalist or producer, a presumably very qualified person who knows how to fact check information, still you could fool that kind of professional. Today, of course, that is unfortunately or fortunately unimaginable. And also, yeah, the whole rise of fake news and manipulation is a very dangerous thing. Like it's one thing when it's used very rarely with particular purpose, and it's another thing when half of the things you see around you is fake news, which sort of defeats the purpose. Like the tricky thing is that you cannot, if you don't have the context, it's very hard to distinguish even between fake news and satire. Like if I were to show the Onion publication, like some article from the Onion, to someone who does not know what the Onion is, they would say, "Why did anybody do that? That is fake news." And I would I would have to explain to them, "No, this is not fake news. This is satire. This is parody. Like it's a good thing." But yeah, you know. So it gets much trickier, I think.
So if anyone has something to add up, please do. Otherwise, I will switch to our next presenter.
3,
Thank you for the
2,
presentation.
1. Thank you. So switching off. Cool. Thanks again.
Thank you. Oh.
So we are welcoming our next presenter, Dmitry Soshnikov, Microsoft Cloud Technical Advocate. Are you around, Dmitry?
Yeah, I'm around. Let me start my video and share my screen. Then I'm ready to start. I hope that everyone can see my screen, right?
Yeah, totally.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ildar and Helena, for inviting me here. I am actually not a professional artist. I am rather a technical person, purely technical person. I work for Microsoft, and the main thing that I do is I try to get people excited with technology. It was called evangelism before, now it's called cloud developer advocacy. So I am looking for new and exciting ways to get people using the technology. And so one of the things I do professionally is creating some cool content. For example, I have the blog post on how to train generative adversarial networks to produce art, and it gives the easy recipe for anyone to do things like that. I'm also like to think about getting kids excited with technology, because I have my daughter who is now 16 years old, and it was always a challenge for me to get her into doing programming, software development, and we were doing things like that, this kind of clock, which uses different ways to show time. That's one of the projects that we did together with her and demonstrated at Maker Faire in Moscow. And also for a few years I was involved in doing some AI projects with big European companies, things like detecting events and videos and so on. So coming to the point of the conference, like what can technical people do for saving the world? As many of my friends, I'm doing some modeling of COVID epidemics in different countries. Many people who are mathematicians, they try to apply their knowledge to do that. I also think a lot about how the education would be transformed by this self-isolation, because I also teach in a few universities in Moscow, and we are seeing the problems that students and educators are having with this. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is how the experience of interactive art changes by the pandemic, because before we used to go to museums and we used to interact with people in museums, and we used to interact with exhibits also in museums. How can we move this to the virtual space? And this continues the previous talk, actually, because the previous talk showed very effectively how internet media can do that. And I want to show one more example of that. One of the ideas that I came up with last year is called cognitive portrait, and the idea is pretty simple. We can take many photographs of people, of the same person or of different people, and then we can use cognitive services, which is pre-trained neural network, to find out the coordinates of different facial features, and we can programmatically align photographs in a certain way to create some artistic effect, for example, like the one shown here on the slide. And the idea is pretty simple. We use this extraction of facial points, and we use affine transformations, which is quite simple mathematical concepts. So I have a repository with software code which produces different types of those portraits. And you can imagine that it's possible to align photographs in many different ways. So, for example, this photograph shows, it's called Growing Up. It shows my photographs of my daughter of different ages aligned according to the age. So she shows kind of how she gets older. And this is produced automatically from a large number of pictures by using this technique. And you can also do other tricky things with the same idea. I have the repository on the internet, so if somebody wants to expand on this idea or create some more techniques using the same kind of idea, I have the repository on GitHub, and here are a couple of samples that other people have created. In particular, I try to involve my students as well into doing those kind of things. Then, of course, this idea suggests that we can probably turn this into something more interactive. And naturally, in the museum, the people are walking by the exhibit, so it's possible to take pictures of people walking by and blend them together to create the joint portrait of a visitor of the exhibition. So this is the prototype of this idea, which I have implemented, and this exhibit was actually demonstrated in the Electro Museum in Moscow before the epidemics. Like, it was there for a month or so during the open call exhibition. And but of course, with the pandemic, this situation changed, and it's no longer possible to do that. So my thinking expanded into the direction, like, what can we do? How can we turn this idea into something interactive, available remotely? And how can we also like, build on this idea? And the first idea is to use the cloud technology, like connected exhibit, which would send the photographs to the cloud. And by doing so, we would be able to create the virtual exhibits which bridge together different locations. So, for example, imagine we have those exhibits in different museums in the world, and it's possible to blend together pictures of different people in different countries who walk by and who observe this exhibit. That's fairly simple if you have the internet connected exhibit. But if once you start doing this kind of thing, you have all the logic functioning somewhere in the cloud. So it's possible also to make this available online to people on the internet. So you can do the website, of course, or you can do a chatbot. So what I did, I created the Telegram chatbot. You can send your photograph to this chatbot, and it will blend this photograph together with the photographs of other people who use the same bot into one blended portrait. So this bot, this is the picture of how it works, and you can try it yourself. It's available in Telegram. It's called People Blender Bot, and it's also available on my website, on my webpage. You can upload photograph to the bot there and see how it works. So that was one example of the project which makes some kind of art-related interactivity available to people online as a way to experience interactive art during the pandemic. And I guess the discussion that we might have is like, how can we add interactivity to this kind of remote settings? Because most of like the previous talk, it answered part of this question, but right now, most of the museums that we are seeing, they are like very traditional. So when we say that we can visit the virtual museum, it would be either a web page showing artworks, or it would be something like a virtual reality space. But does just standing in the virtual reality space makes this experience equivalent to an offline exhibition? Or does really virtual reality, is it really needed to experience art in the best way, or maybe some other means of interactivity are even better? So I guess those are the questions that come to my mind, and we might want to think about some of them. I would be really glad to hear your opinion on whether this idea is useful and how to expand it further. Thanks so much.
So do you want to stop the screen sharing, and then we'll switch to the dialogue mode? Yeah.
Can I add something? I was thinking that your project actually reminded me some project by artists that they produced basically the same. There's some web platform for doing this, but they provided this approach as a way to fool facial recognition, and they suggested to use this technique to like combining two pictures together and to use this picture for a passport, and then you're still recognizable for a person, but you are kind of poisoning data sets to identify your face. and they are like they are engaging all people to use this technique for this purpose. What do you think of that? I think this is well, an interesting way how we can use this technology.
Right. Well, I think the main question here is to which extent it is legal or not. Yeah, definitely. I don't think. Yeah, definitely, it's a good idea, and there are also techniques in neural networks which allow you to put some certain marks on your face, which make your face unrecognizable, which is called adversarial attacks. And even in real life, you just need to put a few marks to make yourself like invulnerable to facial recognition.
But it doesn't really work. Well, actually, I'm going to present like talk about that today. It doesn't really work in many cases. That's why like we should think of some other solutions.
Yeah, I think the general problem with AI is that we can use AI to do something, and then we can use AI to fight it back. It's like it's a very powerful weapon, and it can be used both ways.
Yeah, well, actually, the site of this artist stopped working, but we still can use your tool on Telegram.
We still need to check to which extent it fools facial recognition, because I haven't checked that, to be honest. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks again for your presentation. And I think now we are ready to switch to our next speaker. Helena, do you want to like invite her, because you know her personally, as far as I know?
Tatiana Kourochkina?
Yep.
Tatiana, are you here? Tatiana? Can you hear us?
Включи микрофон, Татьяна.
Yeah. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can speak.
Okay.
Hello.
Here I am. I can see you, Lena. Do you see and do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm switching off because you're presenting your talk.
Okay. Can you also see me? Sorry.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So thank you very much for inviting me. And I didn't bring any formal presentation, but anyway, it's a short conference. The title of my conference is what cultural institutions can do to try to save the world. And it's a bit tricky because personally, I'm very, very pessimistic about what is happening and where we are all going as a species, as an animal, as a human race. But anyway, not only regarding the pandemic, but all the ecology. I mean, I see the pandemic as the consequence of all the global ecological crisis we are facing. And just 1 week before COVID reached Spain, we were in Angar in Barcelona. It was, I think, the last funny evening. Oran Katz was there. We were all talking about different issues. And at some point, we spoke about the climate emergency. And Oran said that for him, it was one of the most exciting, scary movie that you could actually watch in real. So what is happening, it's super scary and you are there and you're watching it. And he said it would have been really super exciting if I didn't have kids. So in my case and in case of many of my friends is the same. Because we have kids, we still have to do something. And as a cultural institution, I think our privilege is that we can put together many different voices, and together we can put a pressure on policymakers, because I think it's not enough just to recycle, just not to eat meat. We should try to change some laws. And this is what we've been doing, creating a lot of projects where artists and scientists are co-working, and with the objective to raise the awareness and to put some pressure on the governments. There were many of them. One is the expedition to Galapagos that was postponed to 2021, where about 3 Nobel Prize winners are going together with some artists to Galapagos, invited by a university from Ecuador, San Francisco de Quito University, to talk about all those ecological issues. But I will talk you just about our last 2 initiatives. So during the COVID, I personally was locked down in Italy, and the northern part of Italy. And I was lucky enough because on that place I had some small garden, and I spent a lot of time gardening and taking care of the flowers and of small fruits and vegetables that I was planting. And at the same time, together with other partners, we were waiting for the result from European Commission, from Creative Europe. The results came out just this week for the project that we submitted in October, long before COVID. The project had to do with plants, art, and technology. And I was working with those real green plants and thinking, oh, I hope they really give us this European grant, because I had a feeling that we need this more than ever. Our plants were helping with such a good friends actually during the COVID. And together with the partner in the same project with Annick Bureau, who is Leonardo Olatz in Paris, we were talking about all these issues and about how much we want this grant. And in case we would not get it, Annick had created an alternative. And what happened that finally on Tuesday they told us, yes, we received this European grant. That means that for 2 years, together with Olatz Leonardo, with Ars Electronica, and with University of Barcelona, we will be doing a lot of different activities that will connect plants, art, and technology. And we will do open calls, and we will produce artworks, do residencies, do cartography events, inviting all sort of cross-disciplinary professionals that we could find. It will be not just botanists doing those cartographies of the gardens, but there will be philosophers, curators, of course, definitely artists. So people who are interested, who have some interesting plant-based project, robotic, bio art project, anything, you can follow us. You can check our project is called Roots and Seeds, and it will start to be active from October. But the alternative that Annick created, it's also going on. We're going to implement a parallel project that has nothing to do, but a lot in common, which is called the Veridical Travel Around the World of a True Imaginary Plant. This is when Dmitry now was telling about trying to bring the physical experience of the museums into the online format. We are trying to make a hybrid format of creating physical experience in local places. People in many different countries and towns, they could do their local events based on plants, and all those events will belong to a big network that would be mainly Olatz Leonardo. And so again, once again, if someone of you is interested, you can also talk to us about you creating in your country, in your city, in your town, in your small community, and art event that has to do with plants. It could be a story about plants. It could be any kind of experience that you personally want to tell. It will be the plant who will travel around the world, imaginary plant, and collect all sorts of stories instead of being it the other way, how it used to be in past centuries. There were humans traveling and collecting plants. This time, this plant will be traveling and collecting human stories. So I think it's been 10 minutes. I can tell more things, but maybe to answer your question.
We could sort of switch to some kind of discussion. If anyone wants to join, please do raise your hand. Meanwhile, I will turn my camera on.
Thank you for the presentation. As I understood that not only artists can apply, right? So scientists also can apply and be a part of the project.
Actually, for the Creative Europe part, for the open calls of the producing artwork, this is meant to be for artists. Mm-hmm. But if you want to take part in the cartography experience, then you should write us. There will be no open call. It would be by invitation, but you can submit your proposal, your candidate, your story. But the traveling plans, it's open absolutely to any member of our community.
Nice. I think we have like speaking for myself, I have a lot of friends who do artistic work with plants and technology and different types of technology, like musicians, people working with robotics. I will share this information for sure to them.
Thank you. Yes.
We also had on our last conference, we had Olga presenting her work. She was also talking about like working with scientists on quite huge actually projects, and congratulations with receiving support. I could easily see like how like in your eyes how like happy, how important is that for you.
It was the best news in 3 months, of course, for sure, certainly.
Yeah, because we all know that it's so hard to fund the projects.
Yeah, it's the worst part of every great idea.
And you told that it's going to last for 2 years.
Yes, for 2 years, with the final presentation of all the, well, most of the outcomes in Ars Electronica 2022.
But also, as I understood, that you have some scientists collaborating with this project, right? Some scientific support.
Yes, they come from University of Barcelona, from the Faculty of Pharmacology, Pharmacy Faculty. Yes, and they're actually botanists by profession. Yeah. But we will be inviting other colleagues. We would like to approach Stefano Mancuso, whom I even have his book on my table. And if you don't know this author, I would suggest you to read. It's been translated to English and to maybe even to Russian language. So we would like to approach him. He knows that we were expecting for the grant. So we will be inviting some interesting scientists too.
Yes, actually, I also do believe that we can try to do something with ecological issues only together, like combining our efforts together, artists, scientists, developers. So I think this is a great initiative.
Yes, and I don't know if it happened to you, but I was super disconnected there from all world in Italy and in a small town. But at the same time, I felt so close to many of my people whom in normal life, I don't have that much contact with. And at the end, we really felt like we want to do things together. We want to cooperate. We want to create alliances. This is like together we are stronger. We felt it really deeply during the last months and weeks. And we will definitely do a lot of collaborations between all of us.
That's why we're doing the conference also, like we're trying to build a community of people trying to do something.
Congratulations on this initiative. Really, I was very touched when I read about it, and great job, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We are trying our best.
No, bravo.
We're thinking of running this conference regularly from now on until like it's interesting and fun and makes some like reasonable results. Today with Helena we will speak about our further plans and what's going on. So yeah, thanks for your feedback. Hope you enjoy, and also please, if you will be able, please do join our conversations tomorrow. And this all also relates to all the participants of today's conference, because the more roundtable discussions we have, the better, because that's initially the general idea was to raise collaborations and to make more people familiar with each other's work. And then we also made the simultaneous interpretation into Russian on VKontakte, bringing like the broad audience from Russia, which is also super cool. And thanks for our simultaneous interpreters, actually. Like they do an amazing job, also voluntarily without any money, just as all of the team and the participants. That's amazing and very inspiring.
Yeah.
But are you familiar? I think, yeah, of course you are, with Olga Kiseleva's work.
Yes, yes, I am.
Sure. Nice.
Yeah.
And where are you going to share the information about the open calls and residences? Do you have a website running already or not yet?
Yes, no, we will now define it better, but when we presented the project to European Commission, we didn't really promise to create a website, but we will do the Instagram account, and we will put all the information through our personal, well, not personal, but the company's websites. So Leonardo Olatz will have all the info there, Quo Artis will have it there. I don't know about the University of Barcelona because it's too big, and Ars Electronica as well, but in our websites, definitely you will find every info. And then we will have this Instagram account. We should probably register now before someone steals it, this name, but I will do it now.
Yeah, thanks. Please do share it with us so that we could share with our community, because we usually make a pretty detailed navigation through the conference talk on YouTube to make it easy for people who haven't watched it online to find specific talks, and we give all the links to websites. So yeah, it would be nice to have yours as well, so that people watching your talk could find where they go next.
Yes, it's fantastic. Thank you. We will have to be a little bit patient during the summer, and then because it actually will be active from October. So those months just have to wait and formalize the contracts and do some paperwork with them.
Nice. That's great. So thank you for your talk.
Thanks.
If anyone wants to say a few words to Tatiana, you can raise your hand. If not, then we follow to the next presentation, which would be Helena and me. So yeah, I don't see anyone raising hand. So thanks again, Tatiana.
So can I start?
Yeah, we are online. Please do.
Okay. So I'm gonna share my screen. So first of all, I'd like to say many thanks to our team, to our curatorial committee, and to our designers, and of course to our PR SMM team and to translators for making this conference happen. I'm sorry, one moment. Oh,
yeah, that's fine.
yes.
Yeah, actually, a lot of people have been working since the first conference, working a lot and working hard and doing amazing job for all this to happen. Oh, Helena is there.
Yes. Well, actually, I wanted to talk a little bit about the previous conference because it was super inspiring, and it also inspired some projects. And Ildar will tell us about the laboratory, which was inspired by the first conference. Well, and actually, I also was thinking that. I also was thinking that I'm kind of fed up with art, which is focused on this hermetic artistic world and like addressing to something to artists or some small community, and also to I'm really fed up with institutional critique as well. So actually, I was thinking that if we can do something, we can do something only like all together, like engaging people from scientific communities, developers, like many different people. And I really like projects which are addressing to the wider audience. And some memes. And also actually when I was thinking about all these many crises which we are facing, like not only pandemic crisis, but also what is happening in America and what is happening actually like in Russia, because like I already said that the same happened in Yekaterinburg, and people are like, and we are still not protesting, and we are still sitting in our Zoom meetings, our conferences, and and I also felt helpless, and I was thinking, what can I do? And also I wanted to say about this terrible catastrophe which happened in the Risk like some days ago, and this is just a disaster, and also together with all these ecological issues and climate change, and we are still sitting online, and with all these feelings of anxiety and feeling myself so helpless, I was thinking, what can I do as an artist, as an individual, as a citizen? And I was thinking that, maybe I could do something to improve like climate change or I don't know, to address some other issues. But my area of interest is AI. And I'm actually interested in AI capitalism and digital control society as an artist. So I was thinking, what can I do in this area? Because this is like something I understand how it works, and probably I can do something in this area. So, and actually I had several ideas of projects which can work with facial recognition systems, and to engage, I wanted to engage people, but actually I didn't have a team to start working on these projects. And actually, what happened? I just and I want to thank you, Ildar, for engaging me to apply to a hackathon on internet freedom. And I just applied my project, which I wanted to produce, and then I already had some collaborator, some colleague, Nikita Prudnikov. Actually, he's an artist and also a developer, AI expert. We collaborated on some projects, and but also some people, they just joined us. They just saw my application and they said, yes, cool, interesting project, we want to join. And one person is machine vision specialist and the other person is web developer, and they just joined our team. And basically what we want to produce, we already said some words about these kind of projects which can fool facial recognition system, like this CV dazzle or some jewelry or different kinds of makeup. And but the problem with all these projects that we never know if it really works. So it's like a speculative projects that not really can be tested, and that's why we decided to create some kind of test, because there are different architectures for machine vision systems, and then what we gonna produce, and we already started to develop this system, is this machine vision test. So it will be an open source platform, and then you can just open the site, and then you can upload your picture or just give access to your camera, and then this camera can make some shots. And then and we're not gonna store your data. We respect your privacy, and then we can identify if something which you are doing with your face works, right? And then we can identify if something works, and also for different kinds of architectures from machine vision. And well, actually, what I'd like to add that this is an open source system, so we are encouraging all people, if some developers, some machine vision specialists are watching us, and if you are interested in this project, if you want to contribute, you can just drop us a line via email. You can find my contacts. So, and the other part of the project, we are not going to develop this in these 2 days of hackathon because it's just not possible. And the other part of the project is this adversarial attack. So actually there are many kinds of the adversarial attacks on machine vision, and we already have some ideas which we're gonna develop in upcoming month. So if you also have some ideas how to collaborate, please contact me. And finally, what I have to say is, well, why is it important to what we are doing? I mean, this conference, this Forecast 2022 online festival, this platform, because actually I don't believe in technology. I believe in people, and that's why I think that we can really try, at least we can try to do something together to join our efforts. And that's why I think this platform and this conference is so important, because we are like building this community of people who want to do something. And well, what is also great that some idea of the project happened after the previous conference, and I think Ildar will tell us about this. Thank you. I cannot hear you.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks for saying kind words about the whole team. I think they're watching us. We are going to also share another people who are not talking heads like we, and we together with Helena. We will post something about our designers and interpreters as well. And also I felt quite happy that after the first conference we managed to organize like a commercial conference for one of the Russian museums and engage the whole team into small like jobs and getting paid at least something, because I always feel sort of not really comfortable, even if we are saying the world, but asking everyone to do it voluntarily for free and do a lot of job, but still be in the background. That's like a tricky part. So yeah, I believe and I hope that in future we will continue doing like that, like combining and helping the whole team to like actually move through this actually pretty weird and hard times for the whole creative professions. So yeah, and I'm super happy that you found your team on the hackathon. That's super cool.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's totally good. So I will speak a bit. We are also waiting one of the participants from our last conference. She will connect a bit later. Meanwhile, I will speak about my feedback from the first conference as well, and what projects have emerged. So as for Helena, of course, for me, that was a very inspiring experience, because I actually didn't know how it will work like when we decided about this format, like short presentations, short discussions. I was pretty shocked when a lot of amazing speakers replied quite fast. So we thought that it was a nice idea to make the format easy to plug in and out, that even if a person is like super busy, she or he can just spend 20 minutes and that's fine already. And you don't need to make long presentations with many pictures. So yeah, and you have just to compress and say the most important, and that's pretty cool. I'm also super happy with the conference, because it raised from the idea of the festival. First of all, we published an open call inviting anyone to collaborate on non-hierarchical level, deciding together what is an online festival in the era of pandemics and how it should work. And when everyone, we received like 100 or more replies to the open call during just 1 week, and it was shocking. It was like, what we now do with this 120 people, something. So we started a Slack channel to talk together what we do next. And pretty soon, in like next 1 or 2 weeks, we found out that not that much people are willing to follow my initial idea of doing something right now, right here, like using this energy of problematic situation that drives people to do something. Most of the participants wanted to like do a more solid, well thought festival that will have very nice design, very nice, well thought and well executed works. So we decided to make the festival later, like in 2 or 3 months, to prepare it well. And then the idea of the conference came just to make this flow of energy of working now also find its own path. And I'm pretty happy with it, and it feels like it's going pretty nice, and we will try to continue it. So I was going to introduce our participant from the last conference, Medina. She has trouble with connecting to internet. No? Okay, so I will speak like as far as she has troubles, I will speak just about the project that emerged. So Medina is an artist from Kazakhstan. She's pretty young, and just as Helena told thanks to me, Medina could tell thanks to Helena, because actually Medina was so inspired with Helena's workshop and just in her personality and attitude towards art and technology that she decided to go to computer science class to university. So she went to studying computer science, which is amazing, and she does pretty nice work as an artist. So she did some projects with the Instagram filters and Instagram masks using those tools. Oh, Helena switched off. Okay, so she was using those tools to
can connect if you need me here.
No, it's fine. Please do stay. Talk to me and to the people. So she did pretty nice masks and Instagram filters with social context, with political context, which is quite a rare thing. Mostly Instagram is thought of something to share like cats and glitter and like sparkling stars and something. And like this is not the problem. Like people sometimes blame those like who create those glitter, asking like, why don't you create something meaningful instead of cats? And I feel that the other way is way more productive. Just go if you want something meaningful, go and do that. And Medina, she's among those who did something like that makes sense to me at least. And an idea came up to my mind: why don't we run a lab of Instagram filters and masks? Inviting some experts in AR, inviting some artists who do work already with masks and filters. Helena, meanwhile, Medina is writing me about like problems with connecting. Maybe you try to text her on Facebook and help her out. Maybe she has a wrong link. Just try to send her a link again and the password.
Sure, of course.
Mm-hmm. So we are going to announce this. What we choose? Oh, she's here. Nice. So Helena, can we switch her off for a while?
Switch off. I can.
Yeah, and invite Medina. Готово? Врубай камеру. Medina, hi. We are waiting you to switch the camera. Yeah, hi. Almost there. Yeah, yes. Hi. Do you hear us?
Привет. Мне наконец-то получилось зайти.
Medina? Oh, nice. Hi, Medina. We do hear you. How was everything?
I had some troubles joining, but now I'm
That's fine. That's fine. No problem. Like actually, before like our talk that is happening now was supposed to happen at 6 p.m. but we also experienced some. First we oh my! Like actually, I'm quite famous for somehow facing some. Oh, where are you coming back, Medina?
Yes, I'm sorry. I just,
no problem. That's fine. That's totally fine. So, like earlier today, like first we had our connection broken, and then I had some like family issues that made me like just leave the studio. So yeah, like we feel you, no problem. You're here, and that's fine. So, you wanted to like I already introduced you and told that like. After Helena's workshop, you went to study computer science, which is pretty cool, and told that you do work with Instagram filters and masks. You might want to show us some of your work because people, especially who haven't attended the last conference, they haven't seen that.
Yes.
Will you be screen sharing?
So, yes, I'm trying to share my screen right now. Just a second.
Yeah, please. Yeah, we are seeing your screen.
Yes. So I wanted to show you the soft in which I do the filters from 2017. and I just wanted to show some of my work, some of my filters. I just wanted to show that this is my first filter ever. It was like it was available only through Facebook story camera, but now I work with more complex 3D models and script inside Spark. And I also hope that I also hope that we can that this lab that we want to fulfill will be interesting to artists who are interested in this medium, and also maybe I will be inspired too. I can show you my last filter that I made. It's actually 3D visualization of my work, and this can also be it can also be interesting how we can work with that. I'm sorry if I.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, Medina is showing Spark AR, which is the most common tool for making AR filters for Instagram, because it's designed for that by Facebook, who, like, as you know, runs Instagram as well. And I also use this tool as well, and we have some experts on this and other tools for creating augmented reality stuff joining us for this laboratory. I will announce them later on the website and our social networks. Also, one of the speakers from our last conference, Ksenia Yermoshina, who is a specialist in UX UI, especially for activist and social apps. She will join us as a mentor as well. So, Medina, do you want to show something else?
Yes. I'm open it right now. I'm on it. As you can see, this tool is very interesting for making simple filters and complex filters as well. It is possible to do any kind of animation and stuff, and it's really interesting too. So I'm just playing with it and working with it as I can. And I'm just presenting some of my works.
That's another one about police violence.
Yes.
Yeah, I love this one. Actually, there's also, I see comments from our speakers. Larry Bogad, who is speaking next, says that by far he totally loves everything he saw. So actually at this moment, I think we are going to switch to his presentation because we were a bit late. Thanks a lot, Medina, for joining us.
Thank you.
Great.
Hello,
everybody.
Wait a second.
Yeah, sorry.
Please meet Larry Bogad, who is the performer and founding director of the Center for the Tactical Performance in Berkeley, California. We're happy to see you, and thanks actually, Joseph, for sharing your contacts and introducing me to your work, because he was like, do you need more speakers? And I'm like, I think yes. Do you have someone on your mind? And he sent your website, and I'm like, hell yeah, that's the guy. So we are happy that you are here, and also like you have a quite different time zone, and like you made the efforts to find this time to talk to us. So yeah, thanks a lot. It's pretty good. So from now on, I will just leave the screen to you.
Okay, it's a total pleasure. I'd like to be able to share, if I can, a PowerPoint. Is that possible? Oh
yeah,
yeah,
that's totally possible.
Super. Okay, here we go. I'm going to try to do like this. Let me see here. If I do this, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do slideshow. Okay, so what I want to talk about today, I teach political theater and performance art at the University of California at Davis. And what I do, it's a strange niche, and is to work with social movements and how to try to use art as part of activism. And just to conceive of how can we use the things we learn in the theater and in performance art for labor struggles or human rights struggles or ecological struggles, that kind of thing. So it might be strange to start out with an image of this mural, but this is a mural I saw in Philadelphia a couple of years ago, and it really caught me because I said, wow, this is done classically in the comic book style. This could be a panel on a comic book page. It's done with all the exaggerated muscularity and image. So it's true to the artistic form of comic books. But of course, it's détourned, as the situationists would say. It's a détournement of that form because it's radicalized. And it's Wonder Woman punching Trump in the face, which is great. And then there's a specificity to it. In other words, you could just say, I'm going to pick something very familiar from the public culture that everyone will understand immediately, so I don't have to explain it. But it could be any superhero. It could be Superman. It could be Batman. But of course, this artist, who's very clever, picked Wonder Woman because Trump is such a misogynist. It makes more sense to choose this specific popular culture figure to make that point. So I think a lot of the work is picking things from the popular culture, deturning them, making them still charming because they're familiar, and then radicalizing them to make a point. So this mural almost stands in for that idea. I'm going to skip a few things here because we don't have as much time, but I will say this was a guerrilla musical that me and friends staged inside a corporate meeting that then got onto MSNBC and CNN and other things because we took a popular song from the musical Annie. And when these corporate people in the healthcare industry were talking to each other, one performer stood up and started singing our song, and then another and another, which was mocking their terrible policies as private healthcare companies, but using a happy song from Annie, the musical from Broadway, just changing the words. So along those lines, if we had more time, I would show you because the singing is very nice. It's not my voice, I didn't sing. Another concept is just in real space, which we're now so limited because of the pandemic, we're all locked in, unless you're in a right-wing state in the United States, and then you're allowed to just keep breathing on each other and spread the virus, I guess, but that's pretty bad. Most of us are controlled in our movements, but this is from Trump's inauguration. And this is an outflanking of a problem in military terms. We want to put a poster or the symbol on the White House that says resist on the day of his inauguration. Obviously, the Secret Service will destroy you before you get anywhere near there. So some people said, wow, there's a construction crane far away on the other side. If we just hang a banner, that's a very small misdemeanor offense. But if we just go onto that construction crane and line the shot up, well, now it's a wonderful conceptual thing. It's in the frame. Resist is in the photographic frame, but we don't have to go near there and get tackled and beat up and arrested. So again, how do we sometimes outflank the problems, the restrictions, conceptually or literally in this case? Here's another example of taking the Statue of Liberty, such a treasured symbol in America and universally familiar, but it happens to be about the rights of immigrants and welcoming immigrants. So smuggling a banner down there, refugees welcome, and you can see the size by the size of the little people's heads there. That's where you would do this kind of action. And you have to have the super magnifying lens focused because you're only going to have that banner up for a short while. Get the picture from far away and make the point, right? Now, I wanted to talk about sometimes you have to, as a movement worker, as a cultural worker in a movement, you have to be both practical and fabulous. And this is a gas mask of mine. It's part of a project we did in New York a long time ago where we wanted to protest the International Monetary Fund and their policies, and we knew we would be tear gassed. So we managed to get a lot of post-Soviet gas masks for very cheap after the Soviet Union fell online. There's all these surplus gas masks. So these are functional old Russian gas masks. But, you know, when you show up at an event, everyone's wearing the same thing. It makes you look kind of hostile, paramilitary. The personality in your face is taken away. You all look like insects. So it was somebody else's idea, Leslie Kaufman, a friend of mine, to say, let's make these masks wonderful and individual and festive. And it will be practically protected from tear gas, but we will also show our values of individuality and creativity and playfulness, even in serious moments. So I think this is an example, again, to use metaphorically for other things, to do something that works in the physical world and the cultural world for what you want to do. Oh, this is my book about these things, but more about the point is the image of the clown kissing the riot policeman's shield. I helped to start a group called the Clandestine Insurgent Rebel Clown Army in England back in 2003. And this is an image from 2005 at our peak, when we had 150 people trained in rebel clowning, civil disobedience, military drill formation, marching, you know, so we would look good as an army, not really. But then our way of relating to the forces of the police, and if I had more time, I would show you a video of this encounter, but is to surprise them, to disarm them through surprise. It's not expected. Usually in this kind of situation where the police were shoving us down the street with their shields, you're either going to fight and lose or run away. Running away is a very honorable thing to do in a situation. I respect that. But instead we played games with them. You know, we moved, and then we started to spin around and play. And there's a lot of interesting video footage. And this is an image that summarizes that. Now, I would talk about this image also as an irresistible image. And I'm going to explain that if I have a little bit of time towards the end, what I mean. But an irresistible image is an image that is so compelling in some weird way, like this image, that even your ideological opponents will reproduce the image. Even while they're publishing an article in a right-wing paper that denounces you and talks about what evil anarchists you are, this is a great photo. They're going to put the photo in. But the photo goes against their narrative. It undermines their narrative a little bit. So it's a way that art can just be a little bit of a crowbar that maybe opens a wedge, opens a crack in the logic structure of the authorities in a certain way. I don't want to overstate the importance of it. It's a small thing, but it's one of the small things that can add up in a movement. The Alcatraz occupation, I don't have time to talk about this, but it was an amazing thing that I would love to follow up and talk about the Alcatraz occupation. This is part of our ancestry in this kind of creative civil disobedience, whereas this is from 1960, and these are the sit-ins where African Americans and their white allies would sit at places in lunch counters where African Americans were forbidden to sit because of the racist laws. And of course, they did sit, and then they were attacked and had things poured on them, and they were punched and had cigarettes burned on them by white racist mobs of people. It's disgusting, but that's what happened. And then the police would show up and arrest the victims of the violence, not the perpetrators of the violence, right? Because it's all a white racist police force. So by doing this on purpose, though, what a lot of people don't know is these were very rehearsed actions. They were not spontaneous acts of dissidence. People rehearsed as if for a show, a very violent show, but they knew that this was theater, that this was sociodrama. These are some people rehearsing for what to do. They're going to blow smoke in your face. They're going to shove you. They're going to yell in your ear. We have to practice this ahead of time, and then we'll be prepared for the harassment when it happens in real life, and we will behave the way we want to behave. But we have to train our lizard brains. We have to train our brains for this confrontation so that it is the image we want, so that it dramatizes the reality of the racist brutality in a way that then actually helped build the movement and helped to get resources and sympathy and action for this movement in the 60s, in the 50s and 60s. This is another image from the same thing. And you'll notice there's a map of the restaurant drawn on the chalkboard in the back because they're planning for this particular restaurant. So these actions were not just emotionally, spontaneous. These were very rational. They wanted to create a sociodrama where their opponents would be cast unknowingly as the villains, and that spectacles of racist brutality would happen, but that everything was staged for maximum dramatic effect to leverage solidarity. And this led to actual things like money being given, free lawyers, more volunteers, laws being changed, judges changing their opinions. So it's not abstract what this kind of performance did. It did specific effective things in the world because it was so disciplined. It was disciplined. It was sociodrama with staging, a rehearsal, and a script. It was, quote, strategic dramaturgy. There was creative suffering. People were already suffering under the system. Let's get creative about the suffering. There's more to say about that, but I will just skip down quickly to the decision dilemma. When you create an act of performance art in the public, that puts the authorities who have all the power in a dilemma. Either they crush you, but you've set it up so that they will look terrible. They will pay a high political price if they crush you, or they let you go and because they know that, and then they still lose something because you've succeeded in doing a very provocative action that makes your point. So there's a lot else I could say there, but there's not really time. So you get the point. Decision dilemmas, creative suffering. And the bottom line here, I would say, is raising the cost of repression, making something that is so creative and compelling and maybe even strange but beautiful in public space that, yeah, they can always repress you. That's the world we live in, but it will be more costly for them, and there will be more of a political benefit for your crew. Okay, being right is not good enough. We must avoid cliche in our work. Protest is an art form, treated as such, and try to be surprising. This can earn a moment to make your point with people who otherwise would not listen to you because they don't agree with you, they don't like the way you look, they don't like your color, they don't like your religion, or you're a minority, or they just don't like you. When you can somehow be surprising in a world where everything has already been done, we've heard it all before, but sometimes you can make something new that is surprising. I'm going to skip the Standing Rock confrontation and this moment. This is the irresistible image I talked about. Now, these are right-wing publications reproducing that image. How much time do I have? Am I out of time now?
You do have time. Like, yeah, like you do have several. Yeah, we have like around 5 minutes. You can keep several of them.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to move forward through a few very strange things here. This was a fake police force we created, the Oil Enforcement Agency, and we actually did nonviolent police actions against climate disaster causers. You see, we have the skull and crossed gas pumps. The uniforms were really awesome and ridiculous. I'm going to move forward through to this. This is the concept of performing the censored image. Under the George W. Bush administration here, he actually did not like all the pictures that were being taken of the coffins of soldiers, American soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan getting killed and being brought back to America. And of course, there's always these flag-covered coffins being taken off the helicopters. So reporters are taking pictures of that because it's part of what's happening. That was hurting George W. Bush's presidency because it doesn't look good. So he did something unconstitutional. He actually forbade taking those photos. And of course, that's against free speech. That's not good, but it took years to try to get that overturned in the courts. It takes time. So what a number of artists, friends of mine, did is they created a group called 1,000 Coffins. And for relatively very little money, they made 1,000 cardboard coffins and covered them with flags and marched them through the streets of New York and Washington, D.C. and elsewhere. And of course, it's an eloquent image that states but it's also performing the censored image. If you can successfully, permanently or temporarily censor an image because of your power, well, let's see if we can perform that image and show the image that's not being shown. And this was an image that then, this is in famous places. You do it in famous places that are very symbolically important. In DC, you can see what's happening here, right? You can see what's happening. You can see what's happening. And now newspapers, including left-wing and right-wing papers, reproduce that image because it is so compelling. It is an image that if you don't include it, your competitors will certainly print it. And it is an eloquent image that requires no caption. It is a work of art that explains itself. And I think that's very important in our contemporary time. So we're looking for what I call pressure points on the body politic. We have pressure points on our body with which you can leverage disproportionately with a very small amount of force, because as social movements, we don't have a lot of power. So try to find those pressure points on the body politic that will leverage our creativity. So this is just a small taste of what's going on. I think I'll show you one short video because it's pretty short. This is me pretending to be a banker at a blockade of a bank during the last banking crisis to explain the bank's position in the least possible good way.
Hi, this is really upsetting. I don't know if you know what's going on here, but there's like a blockade of people. I work for Wells Fargo. I'm a banker. They're not letting me in, and I'm a productive member of society. I have a job. Hello, and they're not letting me in to do my job. And I have like 63 foreclosures to process today. I have 32 small business loans to reject. That is a lot of paperwork. I'm also on the tax evasion committee because we don't pay our taxes in Oakland. That's very hard to justify, and it takes a lot of strategy. So I have a lot of work to do. These people are stopping me from, look at these people. Just get your attention to me, and I want to show you like my job, just so people can understand this. This is my job. Basically, here's a house, and there's a family there, and they live in there, and then I kick them out onto the street, and then they're cold and shivering. It's sort of a Keith Haring effect that I'm going to work, and that's my job, and that's what I do, and they're not allowing me to do my job. It's not a good day in America.
Okay, so that's ridiculous. And so my point is, in that case, you get people's attention with something ridiculous, but you're wearing a suit. You don't have a scruffy beard at that time, and get their attention. Oh my God, there's a banker, and he doesn't like these protesters stopping him from doing his job. And then you slowly, through satirical ridiculousness, expose what that job is, which is not a good job. So that's the end of my presentation. There's so much more we could talk about, but I'm also so excited to hear more from everyone else. And thank you for giving me time.
Yeah, thanks. If everyone is ready for some questions, please raise your hand. Hi, Joseph. Anyone else, maybe? We have like 2-3 minutes to ask questions to Lawrence. Lawrence, do you want to get back to us?
Oh, yeah. I'm here. Wait, what's going on?
Okay, yeah, now you are. I also, let me come here as well.
Great.
So well, I felt the pain of the interpreters while you were showing the video because the sound was quite harsh.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's totally fine. I think it was quite explanatory from the video imagery, as well as, like as you mentioned, how important it is to image to be self-explanatory. Yeah, that's pretty cool. We have a lot of strong works out there. Yeah, thank you for showcasing that. We also do have some problems with our president and the Constitution. Because like he was for the many years he was promoting himself as a person who is taking care of the Constitution, being like a solid, rigid, forever lasting guarantee of civil rights, and now he wants to change it, and we are going to vote on that. Let's invite Joseph for the question. Joseph.
Great.
Joseph, are you here?
Oh, I think his screen just froze for a minute.
Ooh. How can we guess his question?
Oh yeah. Well, I saw a question in the chat. Oh, Joe, are you there?
Welcome back.
Oh, hi, Joe. Now it's going.
Sorry. Internet issues all day today. Larry, good to see you, man. I'm curious. I mean, sorry, I popped in about 2/3. How are you responding to the current lockdown and COVID crisis? There's protests on the streets where you're living.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Because your work is so much performative, group-oriented, crowds. How do you deal with that?
It's an awesome question, and it's really on point, Joe. It's a combination of things that I've been trying to do. One is, last night, to defy this curfew in Oakland, thousands of us did gather with masks on, trying to stay distant because it was important. We're not going to do that every day, but we did go and have a big protest that was illegal in Oakland. And because of a lot of political work and because of the moment, and it was a Black-led action. So white people were there to stand in front if the cops came. but not to monopolize the media if the media came. So there's this expression of, okay, there's thousands of us, some are white, some are black, some are Native American, some are, Latinx. There's all kinds of different people at the protest. But there was a moment we thought the cops were coming, and it was like, white people to the front. So it's like, white people show solidarity and basically stand in front, because it's harder. It raises the cost of repression for the police to hit white people. That's wrong. It's disgusting, but that's where we are, right? So that's what we did. They didn't come, they stayed away, and we had a successful event. Was there a risk, even with masks, of spreading the disease? I hope not, but we did it anyway. But we're not, again, you don't just casually do that 7 times a day. Other things I have done is performance art in front of important buildings, and have someone from a distance take pictures of it, and then we post it online. So something that's symbolic, but nobody's getting near anybody else. And if the police were to say, hey, you can only go outside to exercise, which is the law, my prepared statement was, I am exercising my creativity. And then I just want to see what they say. You know what I mean? But maybe they'll whatever, but that's what I did. So I can share some links to some of those actions to make a statement, have a sign, have a costume. There's an important government building or something that's easily recognizable. Another thing is to make posters and just post them up near where people will walk. So we made some posters that said capitalism is the pandemic, and it's the Monopoly man from the Monopoly board game, but he's got a little coronavirus instead of a dollar bill that he's carrying. And we made that poster, and we know where people will walk now, because you can walk to the grocery store, you can walk to the pharmacy, or you can exercise. You're not allowed to go outside otherwise, right? So unlike usual, if we put these posters up in certain places, more people will see them because there's less air, you know what I'm saying? So these are some of the things we're trying to do. And of course, the idea is always make an amazing video that goes viral. And I shouldn't say go viral, that's a little touchy right now, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, thanks. I'm sorry to interrupt you. We have to invite our next speaker, Egor Kraft. Thanks, Lawrence. If you have time to stay with us, please do, because after Egor, there's going to present Ekaterina Nenasheva. She is a famous Russian activist artist. So you are much welcome to listen to her. Meanwhile, we welcome Egor, and thanks for being with us, Lawrence. Hi, Egor.
Hey, hi, Ildar. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, totally.
Wonderful. First of all, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for this wonderful event. Thank you so much, Ildar and Helena. Wonderful presentation so far. I'm really enjoying it. Since we don't have so much time, I will just quickly jump into my slides right now. Just a sec. All right. Okay, cool. Can you see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So just a few words on myself and what I've been doing over the course of last years. I consider myself a visual artist. Most of my work is to do with research and very much to do with technology. Some of it is kind of like has more of the kind of a direction towards the aesthetic experiments. Some of it is more to do with kind of activistic practices, and I will just briefly show a few examples of what I've been doing lately before I jump into kind of the main topic of this presentation, which is going to be which I would like to talk a little bit about my collaboration with the Ethereum Foundation, which is a blockchain, which is a huge blockchain project. So one of the projects that I did in 2012 was this something that became extremely viral. I created a fake website of non-existent American company that's supposedly based in Pennsylvania, the US, and they are claiming on their website that they have been working in the field of applied chemistry and in particular colors. And they're very happy to announce that they have discovered a brand new color that no one has ever seen before. However, the problem is that the color cannot be reproduced or displayed by the means of screens or digital cameras for one very simple reason. So all of the imagery that we see, rendered on the screen is rendered by the means of a so-called RGB technology, in which the colors are being blended between red, green, and blue, right? Because those are actually the little hardware elements that we have as matrices of our screens. So, but since this color is completely new and has nothing to do with this primary colors, there's no way. There's literally no way for us to see it by the means of screen. And so to follow up, I did a series of videos where some people were speaking if they had supposedly been shown the color, and and kind of like trying to express how amazing it was and how incredible it is, which resulted in this huge kind of like viral campaign eventually that attracted like thousands of visitors on the website, and I have received thousands of emails across a few years, and some of them were really interesting, some of them were really banal. I was approached by people from Cambridge and some researchers and some investors, and even this guy who's famous for having designed the pinkiest pink and the blackest black color that Anish Kapoor that he didn't want to sell to Anish Kapoor. You might have heard of this story. So what was interesting for me is that this project was, I started it in 2012, and in 2012 it was not so much such terms as fake news or post-truth were not really a common terms. I was really inspired by the work of Yes Men that have already been mentioned here, and I think their work very much related to many things that we're discussing here. But for me, it was quite amazing how easy it was to do. A few other projects, and then I jump because I'm afraid we might not have so much time. This was a URL stone, or the kind of an attempt to see which of the media carriers is going to be more durable over the course of time, like a marble plate with a link engraved into it, or the image of this marble plate, or of this marble plate that is stored under this link that is engraved onto the stone on the servers of Wikimedia Commons that are really well protected servers and have various mirrors across the globe to protect this data. And so the project is not complete until one of these media ceases to exist. Quickly on that one, that was a project at Strelka Institute where I started where we actually worked with a group of researchers on kind of speculating around the AI governance and kind of trying to model what AI governance may be, or like decentralized governance, decentralized and both decentralized and AI governance, and what kind of like utopian and dystopian projections may arise in this kind of speculative future, which is also followed by a book and a series of interviews. And one of the recent projects that I've been engaged with is called the content-aware studies, in which I'm trying to kind of work with the with historical documents and machine learning technologies in such a way that I'm trying to reconstruct the missing fragments in the historical documents. In this phase of this project, I was focusing on the classical antiquity kind of as a case study, as it allows me to create a very large data set, and which was partially collected from metropolitan British museums, and then eventually became a major data set for a machine learning neural network that is operating on general adversarial neural network, with which I was trying to kind of reconstruct the missing fragments of the sculptures of classical antiquity, and kind of try and see what aesthetic repercussions would they be, but also try to raise sort of like ethical and historical questions, maybe as to should we use such technologies for historical investigation, and what does it mean if they can render a very realistic and very precise outputs? Sort of what kind of like epistemological problem may arise in this as part of this experiment? All right, I'm gonna skip the slides, and I'm just going to jump into what I wanted to talk about here. And as I will show some slides, I would also like to read bits of like fragments of my essay which I have been writing lately. So as you can see here, there's quite an interesting quote from Mr. President of the United States, with which he goes, "The whole age of the computer has made it where nobody knows exactly what's going on." And perhaps this is true. So back in 2017, The Economist published a story titled "The World's Most Vulnerable Resource is No Longer Oil, but Data." Since its publication, the topic has generated a great deal of discussion, and personal data is the new oil has become a common refrain. Personally, I think this is wrong, and this was also a response from that many communities furiously voiced. The dark side of the data economy has become omnipresent and well observed over the course of last years. It monetizes our attention units, further stimulates the economy of the perverse order, leads to radical monopolizations of market, extrapolates the private, or in other words, establishes a so-called surveillance capitalism, or surveillance capitalism dystopia, if you like. Such is the way that our relationship with information technologies gets commonly described lately. The question at the epicenter is, should such be the main scenario of our new normal? I would argue no. Nation states have executed a series of actions to regulate Wild West data colonies via legislative means such as GDPR. However, inherently, the logic of the internet and its most powerful platforms enable it to operate across geopolitical borders, producing virtual platforms, taking role of states and often forcefully imposing their own forms of governance onto its users. Many of such platforms, and particularly cloud-based systems, store data and operate via the means of corporate-owned hardware infrastructure. Such infrastructure is not an ephemeral, and as the word cloud may mislead, instead those are bulky physical power structures that are distributed across the planetary scale. Although the dystopian perspective of political and economical digital violence drawn above may be disrupted by a recent big-time proposal, an ambient security protocol, a well-articulated master plan posed by the Ethereum community. Based on the blockchain technology, massively popularized thanks to Bitcoin, however more engaging than the latter due to its programmability, designed to extend as a global operational layer and the rise of a new era of the internet, or Web 3.0 as some call it. So, you know, what I'm trying to kind of explain here, this is partially my part of my writing and part of my essay, but also it is a kind of a description as to what I'm doing now with these people that are called Ethereum Foundation, and that I was kind of very lucky and happy to be approached by to collaborate on a project that I think is very interesting and perhaps has a potential to change the internet to some degree. What is Ethereum? The cryptographical programmable technology of decentralization. Ethereum blockchain designed, maintained, and calibrated to enable the following: an internet where money and payments are built in, an internet where users can own their data and apps don't spy and steal from them, an internet where everyone has access to open financial system, an internet built on neutral open access infrastructure controlled by no company or person. Which is, you know, I'm not able to go so much deeply into technical details, and I'm also not so very well aware of all the complexity of details in terms of like technicalities of how it works. But you know, I'm sure many of us here know that that blockchain is a technology, basically is a cryptographical technology that allows for kind of new sort of solutions and new sort of systems of trust, and kind of like that basically enables a new layer built on top of the internet infrastructure that we have today, that would allow for kind of different dynamics and different, perhaps different power structures, you know, and kind of different organizations of these power structures on the layer of the internet itself. And so the project with which that I'm working on with Ethereum Foundation is called the Swarm. The Swarm has emerged together with Ethereum Foundation and is being integrated, deeply integrated technically into the blockchain architecture to enable the decentralized peer-to-peer storage systems. In other words, it's a blockchain-based BitTorrent on steroids that will enable incentivized peer-to-peer data storage for a truly serverless future and a genuinely new internet. So, in simple words, we all know that, there's been a lot of stories and there's been a lot of hype around Bitcoin and kind of like the infrastructure that grew from the notion of Bitcoin, right? Such as people were mining Bitcoin. Imagine the situation in which you're able to sort of rent out, as if you would rent out a room on Airbnb or Airbnb. You would be able to rent out a space on your hard drive that would be used that would be instrumentalized by this Ethereum layer built on Swarm layer built on Ethereum blockchain that would basically allow others to store files on your hard drive space, but it would allow it to do in such a way that you would not have a single file on your hard drive space. So for example, I have a 1 terabyte SSD on my laptop right now, and I decide to dedicate 200 gigabytes of that hard disk to Swarm. Okay, so what happens if whenever the file is being uploaded to Swarm, the file gets distributed into tiny chunks of data, like about 4 kilobits, and they would just spread across multiple users in such way that 200 gigabytes of my space on my hard drive would be easily filled up with these chunks of data that I would not be able to reconnect unless I actually have an access to that particular file. So technically, what does it lead to is it's very interesting because it leads to a completely serverless internet, right? So it leads to the internet in which there's no more need to store, to rent like Amazon servers, for example. There's no more need, the internet in which we actually have control of the data. The internet in which we can send a file, not being worried about that this file in the process of sending also gets copied and kind of like stays on some other server somewhere. Okay. I'm going to jump further on, and so that's basically like a background to what exactly I'm working on. So I'm going to continue reading a little bit more. As members of Fair Data Society, we are particularly concerned with current issues surrounding the ethical treatment of personal data. Speaking to the urgent need for more regulation, considering the large-scale misuses that have occurred over the past years. For example, the story of Cambridge Analytica, right, and its kind of political implications. Enabling peer-to-peer storage, Swarm provides the opportunity to leverage control over the data streams to individuals and communities, decentralizing an enormous power accumulated by corporations, state, and other platforms. Therefore, aside from described technical storage solutionism, we would like to introduce to the wider audience the concept of fair data, a framework and guidelines for organizations as to how to treat personal data. Okay, so the idea is very simple. So if we want to build a new internet which operates on fair data, we basically have already a technical solution for it now, right? It's in the progress of development, but sooner or later we will have it. Then the question is, what are those fair data principles, and how do we actually agree upon them, right? I believe that this is something that should not be decided, in a centralized manner. It's not something that should be decided by Ethereum Foundation, for example, or by us working on the Swarm project within the Ethereum Foundation. But instead, it should be something that is perhaps kind of decided and defined by a global community instead. And the idea that we are, kind of interested in right now, and something that I would also maybe like to encourage, those people that are attending the conference today to engage in, is to kind of try and collaboratively decide what are these fair data principles. And in order to do this, we're in the process of building a platform that would enable that would basically operate, as a website that kind of functions in a similar way as to how you imagine a Wikipedia functioning, such that multiple people can be working on one article and can actually agree on that and can make decisions or like make edits and then continuously edit it. And also at the same time as something that perhaps reminds of a Google Doc, where we simultaneously can write things at the same time, right? Or edit the text. And so, to provoke a broader public conversation, involvement, and platform participation, an infrastructural and informative message must be voiced out. I see a language and a tone here as a very important subject matter, in which didactic and artistic qualities are in entanglement. And this is exactly my role as part of the project and as part of the foundation. What you see here on the slide is the installation that I did in collaboration with these people for a show that took part a year ago in Malta. And the work was based on the notion of 12 nodes. Sorry, it's called 12 nodes, but it was based on the notion of 12 tables. And 12 tables is a historical document. 12 tables was one of the first examples of law or like sort of like legislation in written form. The law of the 12 tables was the legislation that stood at the foundation of Roman law. The tables consolidated earlier traditions into an enduring set of laws were displayed at the Roman Forum, such that citizens could come to the Roman Forum and actually try to resolve a certain issue by looking at these 12 tables and see if there's any kind of solution to that. And so the idea for the project, the idea for this kind of representation of what we've been doing here, especially with this kind of fair data protocol, was to take these 12 tables and to turn and kind of like to take actual 12 marble blocks and to build the screens into them that would in real time display what is actually happening on this platform, where sort of this legislation is being written. The legislation for the new internet is being, or fair data, if you like, is being written in a real-time manner. And I'm just going to play, it's not even a video, but it's just like a sort of a footage that documents the work.
We also have to. Sorry, we also have to ask you to wrap up. Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm actually done. Yeah. If you have any questions, you're very welcome. Should you have any kind of interest in in collaboration and getting to know more, please don't hesitate to get back to me via the means of email or whatever it is.
You can stop the screen sharing, and maybe we invite if anyone wants to ask question, you can do it quickly. Raise your hand or type to the chat that you want to join the conversation. And I also invite our next speaker, Ekaterina Nenasheva. Can you turn the camera on? Let's see. Camera. I have to. Meanwhile, I have to ask everyone who is speaking English. If you haven't done so yet, please turn the English translation on. You have the button like that looks like a globe on the tool panel below. So you have to press English. You have to hit the globe and then select English. And Kate, did you select Russian?
Привет, да, простите, пожалуйста, я довольно поздно узнала про то, что я буду сегодня здесь с вами. Ильдар, спасибо, что позвал, и не успела подготовиться хорошо по-английски, вот, поэтому, надеюсь, мы поймем друг друга, и да, я буду делать паузы, чтобы вы успевали переводить, правильно?
Не то чтобы, I wouldn't I wouldn't say that it's actually doing pauses, but just please don't speak very slow because the translation is simultaneous. So you can speak, but just don't make it too fast.
Спасибо. Как, наверное, вы поняли из анонса, я занимаюсь акционизмом и арт-активизмом, и, конечно же, для нас, как для художников, которые работают на улице, естественно, не совсем понятно, как вообще можно реагировать на пандемию. Ровно поэтому я уже 2 месяца задаюсь вопросом, что я могу делать как...
Constantly questioning what I can do as an artist, since I work not only on the street, but I work with people. I work with, so I use participatory methods, and because of that, it's very important for me to interact with people on the street, to talk to them, to present my ideas. And because of that, 2 months ago, when the pandemics and lockdown started, I decided to make my small research, which is called, as such, Art Activism in Pandemic, Tactics and Strategies. So I happened to realize that for all of us as artists of the old wave of actionism and the new wave of actionism, new wave is quite a few in Russia as of now. And so I decided to give myself this moment of calmness, stop shaming myself, and I decided just to check practices and try these out. So it is a sort of a research for me. Which practices can I put to use? Which participatory and actionary practices can be transferred into the virtual reality? And what is the role of the art activist in pandemics? And what can you do in times like this? Being a person who's constantly working in the open space, for whom it is important to conduct a lively face-to-face dialogue. And so I will briefly overview what I'm doing as of now and what are the conclusions to which I jumped through my research. But that is a very preliminary research, preliminary data. So the thing we started with my fellow colleagues, psycho-activists and art activists, we reached out to people on social network and decided to ask them what would they, so they as people who are isolated and who have no chance to get into the open urban space, what would be their message to the city? And so our artistic idea was to leave a mark, leave a message from isolated citizens to the city. And through this, make a person visible. Because I do think that the government and authority, and Russian especially, is trying to wipe out the image of the citizen from the public space. They want to mingle us, they want to mix us, and make us a homogeneous category. And due to that, because of that, we have those small pictures here. So we had small signatures, small signs within the city, mostly of existential sort, because people were writing that they're tired. And there is, for example, to the right, you see this red lettering which says, "I'm tired of being afraid." And on the left, you see this white writing which says, "We will all die, live as you wish." Because this isolation is transformative in a sense. So I do hope that you see the message here. So you see 2 pictures here. And so we offered people to send messages to those who keep working throughout the lockdown times. And we have very straightforward sayings, and we left them in places where delivery guys go, where pharmacists work. To the left, you see the writing which says, "Thank you for the risk." And to the right, you see a brief wording which states, "You are required," or more likely, "We need you." And we also initiated, I hope you see this, talking masks. So the idea for us was that corporation, like especially delivery companies, do not really think about their workers. And so my mom, who works as a pharmacist in Krasnodar, it is to the south of Russia, she had this aggression in pandemics because people going to the drugstore were they were experiencing emotional peaks and ups and downs, and they were threatened constantly by the clients. And so we decided to make some personal touch to those who work in times like this. And so we decided to have this token masks with the transparent square. And we actually learned that people created masks like this in US and European countries, but they were aiming to make those masks for people with hearing disabilities. And we decided to make those masks for people in delivery. And I hope you see this. So we were going around and handing those masks out. And we had this problem that people with hearing impairments, they read lips, and those masks were of high demand for them. Because in other countries, it was already institutionalized in a way, because those masks were created from easily accessible materials. But we were buying, files for documents, and these files are not hygienic and marginal in a sense. And so we had a request from people with hearing impairments, but we were not able to respond to it. And so our artistic movement failed in a sense because there was no response to this need. And now we have those masks as a sort of our... So I do hope that I was correct. So yell at me, let's quarrel. So this project can be called Let's Quarrel, and we launched it in St. Petersburg. And we have the open stats on European Union that there is a 1/3 raise in home violence due to the pandemics, because people are together in lockdown, they have no other option, and they have to socialize with one another. And we have this data on domestic violence, and there is a surge in Russia because we have those horrid news that husband cut off a hand of his wife, or he killed his wife and buried her in the garden nearby the house. And so I decided to go against it, and I decided to invite people in different districts and in different yards to come quarrel with me. I was printing out handouts. I was printing some posters, and the text was pretty much like, so if you want to quarrel and if you want to pick a fight, choose me. You can do that with me rather than with your significant other, and so that you can have this, let the steam off, because isolation initiates all those triggers and flashbacks. And here I'm borrowing PTSD vocabulary, because we sort of go through traumatic experiences when we get stuck with oneself. And so I was consulting with psychologists, and it is very important for me to work in a field of psychology because was studying psychology as well. And so we developed a certain guideline on how to quarrel in a sort of non-harmful manner. And for me, from one side, it is important to understand how can we talk about trauma, how can we talk about different types of violence in public space. And on the other hand, this project is also important for me because, so I think that we cannot work with the topic of violence, be that pandemics or be that broad understanding of violence, we kind of talk about violence unless we're not talking to the other side, because there are abusers whom we should talk to. I can talk at great length how this project works. It works already for a month, and I spoke to teens who were beaten by their parents. I spoke to young girls who were molested within the family. I had a veteran of Chechnya war conflict, and he was talking about his PTSD and how hard it is for him to use words rather than beating, because violence, he's more accustomed to talking violence rather than talking with words. And so I do plan to use this action in other cities in Russia, and then we would initiate publishing a book dedicated to the experiences shared, especially experiences through the times of pandemic. And this is the last slide. So here we have a police worker, and we have this veteran of Chechnya war conflict. And so there are certain specialities with which I sort of work. And so there is this low participation regarding both offline and online practices. And our activist community is a very small one, and the level of involvement is very low from the public. And we as the community usually think that if we work with certain topics, there would be more people interested in our works. And of course, there are more time for people to debate certain things, to flood, to watch memes. And we are very tired of one another and of those waves of content crashing over one another. And it deeply affects the way people perceive social activists' artistic work. And I face a lot of aggression in social networks as of now. And I do think that there's yet another question: how can we work with trauma now? Because we're now experiencing trauma. Because as we perceive it from social, political perspectives, we experience trauma because our everyday life is now being affected and now being transformed and blurred, and the ways in which we interact with other people, and both when we talk about the artists and we talk about the people interested in psychological activity, it is a very interesting question on how can we create a self-reflexive, analytical piece of art. And I do think that we kind of do that inside trauma, because what we do now would be rethought outside this traumatic space. But I sincerely share things that I do, and I'm not saying that these are established works. And in times of pandemics, it is important for me just to do something as an artist. So it is important for me to be on the street, because for my human side and my political stance implies that there are to be people in the society who confront the system which is being pushed into our existence by the authority, because authority says we're not to be out on the streets, we're not to consult doctors, we are to die silently in our flats. And we see that there are also changes to the constitution which are happening now, and it happens in the background of the pandemics, and it initiates a certain wave, it initiates a certain turbulence, and therefore we have this forced history of changing the constitution which lies ahead of us. So my stance is, I do something. I do not know whether it is good or bad art. It is my rebellion against the governmental system and the governmental ideas which are being forced into us during the times of pandemics. But I do think that pandemics is also a very boring apocalypse in which there is no place for being human. And that's kind of weird, because you have those cultural revolutionary ideas which you live through, and then you have this apocalypse in which you are not really required. This is a historical event upon which you cannot have any effect. And I do think that's a very interesting point. Seemingly, I made it in my time slot.
Thanks, Kate. Can you stop your screen share? And I also invite everyone for the dialogue. If anyone is willing to ask questions to Katrin, you can just do so. Raise your hand or turn your camera on. You can type to the chat if you want to talk to Katrin. Here is Helena. We do. It depends on what language you switch on. If you're on English in the interpretation button, then you speak English and listen. So we have a simultaneous interpretation.
Я тогда по-русски спрошу.
So my question is, so I had this feeling that, so I felt this helplessness, but at the very same time I felt the wish to do something, just to do something. And I thought that maybe it is a way of working with trauma, working and living through trauma. Maybe you had ideas like that. Oh, most definitely. I have discussed it a lot with many people. I also talked to my psychotherapist about this. So there's this story that there are mass upheavals, mass uprising, and then there's a tragedy which involves all the country, and this is this historical event. This is a cultural revolution in China, for example. That is a historical event, and I think that some of our political activists want to have this cultural revolution in Russia, and so this thing happens, and we have this historical event as a construction, and it erases at about a half of your identities which you had. And that's an emergency situation for your practice, for your identity, for your artistic identity, because you don't have this idea, so you're not required here, you're not actual, you're out of date. And it's very scary for me, because like, if we have a war, what can I do there? Am I afraid of dying? As of now, when I'm sitting in my comfy flat, I think that I'm not afraid of dying. But when if the war starts, if I'm not able to find the role which is suitable to my identity, if I'm not able to stabilize the relationships around me, this is the most scary part, not just for the activist or an artist, but just for the human being. I do not know how you feel about that. No, I was talking about the other thing. So I was basically saying that, so this is this neurotic wish just to do something, just to work day and night, just to do something, just not to, so that I would be able not to think about all those scary things happening outside. So I was more commenting on the work as the way to sort of push away the existential fear. Well, Lena, I do think that we talk about the pretty much things alike, because work may be a safety net, but for me, there is more of a sort of negative connotation in the safety net metaphor. It is a mode of survival for me. You're resisting in a way you can, and the way which is available to you. It is about finding one's own place. I do think we debate pretty much the same phenomenon, just using the different vocabulary. Thank you so much.
So, Egor, do you want to ask something to Kate if you ask to turn the camera? Yeah, turn the mic, Egor.
I'm good. I don't have questions. I was just really wanted to kind of encourage everyone here to have to turn on camera maybe and to have conversations. We have a wrapping up session.
I see, to join the discussion. So I think at this point we can sort of wrap up. Thanks everyone for participating, and thanks Katrin for finding time to join us, because actually I asked Katrina to join us like yesterday, and she like made it really quick. And thanks to her for this presentation. She even prepared the presentation in English, which is cool. We had a pretty nice.
Sorry
that I spoke Russian.
It's totally fine. We have a simultaneous interpretation from our wonderful Dmitry and Darina, and as far as I heard, your translation was pretty good, so you can now share it with your foreign colleagues, and they will be pretty clear about what your practice is now. Goodbye, everyone. Helena, do you want to say something to wrap it up?
Well, just I have to say that today was so inspiring day, another day of the conference, because everything what was said was super relevant to what I'm thinking about now. And well, thank all of you. Thank you, Igor. Thank you. And thank you, Katrin.
Nice. So let's see you tomorrow. I hope tomorrow there will be no fire at my grandmother's house and we will start on time. Yeah. Ooh, such a day, really. It was even crazier than ever. So yeah, see you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. And please, everyone who was with us today, you are super welcome to join tomorrow for the discussion. Even if you don't present, you can plug in at any time. Please do so. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Oh.
That was cool.